The storm arrived faster than anyone had predicted. One moment, Lake Michigan rolled in long, gentle waves beneath a gray evening sky. The next, the wind screamed across the water hard enough to rip umbrellas from tourists' hands and send beach chairs tumbling across the sand. Brooke Sullivan blew 3 sharp blasts on her rescue whistle. "Everybody out of the water!" Parents called for their children. Teenagers laughed as they splashed toward shore. A pair of paddleboarders fought against the rising waves. Within minutes, the beach emptied just as emergency protocol demanded. Almost. Brooke scanned the water one final time. Something floated nearly 200 yards offshore. At first, she thought it was driftwood. Then lightning split the sky. The flash revealed a man's arm. Without hesitating, Brooke grabbed a rescue buoy and sprinted into the freezing water. The first wave hit her chest. The second nearly knocked her off balance. She pushed forward anyway. Years of teaching frightened beginners how to trust the water had taught her one lesson above all else. Panic drowned people. Calm brought them home. She forced herself to breathe steadily as the current pulled against her. Closer. Closer. Another bolt of lightning illuminated the lake. The man disappeared beneath the surface. Brooke dove. The cold stole the air from her lungs. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Then her fingers brushed fabric. She reached again. A suit jacket. She wrapped one arm beneath his shoulders and kicked toward the surface with every ounce of strength she had. When they finally broke through the waves, he wasn't breathing. By the time she dragged him onto the sand, rain hammered the shoreline so hard it blurred the city lights in the distance. He looked as though he belonged anywhere except this beach. Expensive Italian shoes. A tailored charcoal suit soaked through with lake water. A white dress shirt that had once cost more than Brooke probably spent on groceries in a month. Dark hair plastered against his forehead. A deep cut above one eyebrow leaked blood into the rain. She checked for a pulse. Weak. Very weak? No. She tilted his head back and began rescue breaths. Then compressions. Again. The wind swallowed every sound except her counting. 28, 29, 30. She leaned down once more. Water burst from his lungs. He coughed violently before rolling onto his side. For several long seconds, he simply fought for air. Then he looked at her. Steel gray eyes. Sharp. Alert despite the exhaustion. They locked onto hers as if trying to memorize her face. "You," he whispered hoarsely. "You came back." Brooke laughed softly, relief washing through her. "Of course I came back. You would have drowned. So would you." For the first time, the stranger managed the faintest smile. "I was counting on someone kinder than me." The ambulance arrived 8 minutes later. Paramedics hurried toward them. Brooke stepped aside, expecting her part in the story to be over. It wasn't. As the medics lifted him onto the stretcher, the stranger reached out unexpectedly and caught her wrist. His grip wasn't strong, just determined. "Don't." His breathing remained uneven. "Tell them my real name." Brooke frowned. "I don't know your real name." He hesitated, long enough for something unreadable to cross his face. Finally he said, "My name is..." Another pause. "Ethan." Something about the hesitation felt wrong, but shock did strange things to people. She chose not to question it. "Okay, Ethan." One paramedic interrupted. "Sir, do you have family we should call?" He answered without taking his eyes off Brooke. "No." "Emergency contact?" "No." "Occupation?" A heartbeat passed. "I'm an accountant." The answer came too quickly. 3 days later, Brooke almost forgot about him. Life returned to its ordinary rhythm. Morning swim lessons. Children terrified of deep water. Retired couples learning to float after decades of avoiding pools. Coffee from the same small cafe every afternoon. She liked ordinary. Ordinary paid the bills. Ordinary kept her world predictable. Until a black sedan appeared outside the community aquatic center. Then another. Then another. 5 luxury vehicles parked silently along the curb. Men in tailored black suits stepped out. Not police. Not businessmen. Their movements were too coordinated. Too disciplined. The tallest walked toward the entrance. Everyone inside the pool deck stopped talking. He removed his sunglasses. Miss Sullivan? Brooke nodded cautiously. Yes. He extended a small velvet box. Our employer asked us to deliver this. Inside rested a simple silver compass. No card. No note. Just 4 engraved words. Thank you for returning me. Brooke looked up. Who is your employer? The man smiled politely. I'm afraid he prefers to remain private. Before she could ask another question, the convoy drove away, leaving every parent on the pool deck staring after them. That night, Brooke placed the compass on her kitchen table. She turned it over in her hands. The engraving was beautiful, elegant, expensive. Far too expensive for an accountant recovering from a boating accident. She frowned. Something didn't fit. Not the cars, not the bodyguards, not the gift, not the way he'd hesitated before saying his own name. For the first time since the rescue, she wondered whether Ethan had lied about more than just needing help. Outside her apartment window, rain began falling again. Across the city, the maid the top, no nine, knowing the sign is. The cut above his eyebrow had been stitched. His expression was unreadable. A man beside him spoke quietly. Boss, we found the woman. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked down at the silver compass's twin, resting in his hand. The instructor? Yes. Background? Exactly what she claimed. No criminal record, no political ties, no connection to any family. Another pause, and she still believes your name is Ethan. A faint smile touched his lips. It has been a very long time, he said softly. Since someone looked at me and saw only a man who needed saving. The advisor lowered his voice. Should we continue watching her? The smile disappeared. Matteo DeLuca, the most feared mafia boss in Chicago, looked out over the rain-soaked skyline. No, his answer came without hesitation. We protect her. The advisor blinked. Protect her from what? Matteo's eyes never left the city below. From the people who saw her save me. Far away, Brooke switched off the light in her apartment, unaware that the ordinary life she cherished had already begun to disappear beneath the gathering storm. And somewhere in the darkness, someone else had already received a photograph of the woman who pulled the mafia boss from the lake alive. The photograph reached Alessandro Vitale before sunrise. It slid across a polished walnut desk inside a candle-lit penthouse overlooking downtown Chicago. Rain still streaked the floor-to-ceiling windows. The woman in the picture smiled as she knelt beside a little boy at a swimming lesson. She wore no designer clothes, no expensive jewelry. Nothing suggested she belonged anywhere near the violent world Alessandro controlled. He tapped the photograph once. This is her? One of his men nodded. The woman who pulled Matteo DeLuca out of Lake Michigan. Alessandro's expression remained calm. Does she know who he is? No. And Matteo? He let her believe he was an accountant. For the first time that morning, Alessandro smiled. The great Matteo DeLuca. He leaned back, lying to impress a swimming instructor. His amusement faded almost immediately. Watch her. His lieutenant frowned. Kidnap her? No. Threaten her? No. He looked again at Brooke's smiling face. If Matteo bothers lying to a woman, his voice became almost thoughtful. She must already matter. Back to ordinary. Brooke refused to let one strange rescue change her routine. At 7 every morning, she unlocked the doors of Harbor Point Aquatic Center. The familiar scent of chlorine greeted her before the lights even warmed the water. She preferred mornings. Everything felt honest before the city woke. Children arrived carrying colorful swim bags nearly as large as themselves. Parents waved from the viewing area. Retirees joked about aching knees before easing into the warm therapy pool. This was the world Brooke understood. One where success meant helping someone conquer fear. Coach Brooke, a 6-year-old girl, splashed excitedly toward her. I floated by myself. Brooke clapped. I knew you could. The little girl beamed. You always know. Brooke laughed. No, I just know you. Just before lunch, the front desk receptionist hurried toward her. Brooke? Yeah? There's someone asking for you. She expected another parent. Instead, She saw him. Ethan. Or at least the man who had introduced himself as Ethan. He stood near the entrance wearing dark jeans, a charcoal sweater, and a navy overcoat instead of the soaked suit she'd last seen. Without the blood and storm, he was devastatingly handsome. Women walking past slowed without realizing it. Men instinctively stepped aside. He carried himself with effortless confidence. Yet his expression softened the moment he saw Brooke. "You look healthier." She smiled. I was about to say the same thing. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Brooke folded her arms. "So," he raised one eyebrow. "So, you disappear. You send a gift that probably costs more than my car. You have people who refuse to tell me who you are. And now you show up pretending everything is normal." His lips curved slightly. "I was hoping." She shook her head. "You're terrible at pretending to be normal." A quiet laugh escaped him. "I've been told that before." They walked toward the coffee shop across the street. The October wind carried the smell of rain. For the first time since the rescue, Brooke noticed something strange. Wherever Ethan walked, people watched him. Not openly, subtly. A man reading a newspaper lowered it. A woman across the street paused beside a parked car. A delivery driver glanced into his rearview mirror twice. She frowned. "Do you know those people?" He didn't even turn around. "No, you didn't look." "I didn't need to." Something about the answer unsettled her. Inside the cafe, Brooke ordered tea. He ordered black coffee. When the waitress asked for his name, he hesitated. Again, Brooke noticed. "Ethan." The waitress smiled. "I'll call it out when it's ready." As soon as she walked away, Brooke leaned forward. "Why do you always hesitate before saying your name?" Silence. He studied his coffee cup. "I haven't used it much lately." She frowned. How does someone forget their own name? "I didn't say I forgot." His gray eyes met hers. "I said I haven't used it." The conversation drifted elsewhere. Swimming. Chicago winters. Favorite restaurants. Books. Travel. For one unexpected hour. He wasn't mysterious. He wasn't guarded. He listened. Really listened. When Brooke spoke about helping adults overcome their fear of water, he asked questions instead of waiting for his turn to answer. She liked that. Most people didn't. Then she asked the simplest question of all. "So, what kind of accounting do you do?" He looked out the window. "Corporate." "What company?" A long pause. "I own part of it." She laughed. "That doesn't answer anything." "It answers enough." "No, it really doesn't." For the briefest moment, she could have sworn he almost told the truth. Instead, he simply smiled. "I warned you." "When?" "I'm not very interesting." She rolled her eyes. "You almost drowned in Lake Michigan during a storm. You arrive everywhere in luxury cars. You give thank you gifts worth thousands of dollars. And you think you're not interesting?" "I try not to be." The black SUVs, as they stepped outside, Brooke froze. 4 identical black SUVs lined the curb. Men in black suits stood beside each vehicle. The instant Ethan emerged, every one of them straightened. One opened the rear passenger door. Another scanned both ends of the street. No one spoke. No one questioned. They simply waited. Brooke slowly turned toward him. "I thought..." She looked from him to the convoy. "You were an accountant." He followed her gaze. "I am." She raised an eyebrow. "Do accountants usually travel with 8 bodyguards?" He answered calmly. "I receive threats." "What kind of accountant receives threats?" "The complicated kind." She couldn't help laughing. "You're impossible." Something warm flickered behind his eyes. He hadn't laughed like that in years. A shadow in the crowd. Across the street, a man wearing a baseball cap quietly photographed the scene. Brooke never noticed him. Matteo did. His smile disappeared instantly. His entire posture changed. Brooke felt it before she understood it. 1 second, he was relaxed. The next, he became frighteningly still. His gaze locked onto the man across the street. The photographer lowered his phone and disappeared into the crowd. Matteo's driver stepped closer. "Boss?" Brooke blinked. "What did he just call you?" The driver looked horrified. Matteo answered before anyone else could speak. Old nickname. She studied him. You have strange friends. You have no idea. The lie begins to crack. That evening, Brooke couldn't stop thinking about him. She opened her laptop, typed one simple search. Ethan, accountant, Chicago. Thousands of results. None matched. She tried again. Nothing. No company. No business profile. No professional license. No social media. It was as if he didn't exist. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Hello? His voice. I hope I'm not interrupting. She smiled despite herself. You somehow found my number. I asked politely. You bribed someone. A brief silence. Possibly. She laughed. I knew it. His tone became unexpectedly serious. Brooke. Yes? If anyone asks about me, her smile faded. Tell them, you barely know me. She sat upright. What happened? I can't explain. Tre. Another silence. Finally he said, sometimes the safest place for good people is far away from men like me. Before she could answer, the call ended. The man in the mirror. Late that night, Matteo stood alone inside his penthouse. The city stretched endlessly beneath him. Marco Rossi, his oldest advisor, entered quietly. You shouldn't have seen her. I know. You definitely shouldn't have called her. I know. Marco Sahil. Then why? Matteo looked toward the rain-covered skyline. When she looked at me, he said quietly, she didn't see Matteo DeLuca. He paused. She saw a drowning man. Marco understood immediately. And you missed that. Matteo didn't answer, because the silence was answer enough. Across the city, Brooke stared out the window of her apartment. She had the unmistakable feeling that every answer Ethan gave only created more questions. She didn't know his real name. She didn't know where he worked. She didn't know why armed men followed him everywhere. But one thing had become impossible to ignore. The man who claimed to be an ordinary accountant was hiding a life so dangerous that even speaking to him felt like standing too close to the edge of a storm. And somewhere below her apartment building, unnoticed in the darkness, a black SUV remained parked across the street. Its headlights were off. Its engine idled quietly. Inside, two armed men watched the entrance. Not because they had been ordered to spy on Brooke, but because Matteo DeLuca had given a single instruction before midnight. She goes nowhere alone. Brooke slept peacefully, unaware that the most feared man in Chicago had already begun protecting her from enemies she didn't even know existed. The first bullet wasn't meant for Brooke. It shattered the windshield of the black SUV parked across from her apartment. The crack echoed through the quiet Chicago street just before dawn. Inside the vehicle, two of Matteo DeLuca's security men reacted instantly. Sniper. Both doors flew open. The guards rolled behind the engine block as a second shot slammed into the hood, sending sparks into the cold morning air. Across the street, Brooke slept peacefully, unaware that a gunfight had begun outside her building. One guard pressed a hand to his earpiece. Boss. A burst of static. Then Matteo's calm voice answered. Report. Long-range shooter. No civilian casualties. They never aimed at us. Pause. They aimed at her building. Silence. Then Matteo spoke with the same quiet control that always frightened his enemies. I'm on my way. A morning that should have been ordinary. Brooke woke to the sound of her alarm. Nothing seemed unusual. She dressed in a navy athletic jacket, tied her hair into a loose ponytail, grabbed her swim bag, and left for work. The hallway smelled faintly of fresh coffee. Mrs. Henderson from apartment 4B smiled as she watered her plants. Everything felt perfectly normal, until she stepped outside. Two construction trucks blocked the street. Workers in reflective vests surrounded the sidewalk. Police cruisers flashed blue lights at the far corner. One officer approached her. Morning, ma'am. You'll need to use the rear exit today. What happened? Gas line inspection? She nodded, accepting the explanation. She never noticed the bullet holes hidden beneath the black tarp draped over the damaged SUV. She never noticed the men pretending to repair pavement while quietly scanning every rooftop. And she certainly never noticed the man standing across the street inside a parked sedan. Matteo watched until she drove away. Only then did he lower the window. Marco stood beside the car. She suspects nothing. Good. The sniper? Gone. Marco hesitated. They weren't trying to kill her. Matteo already knew. They were sending me a message. A lesson about fear. That afternoon, Brooke taught a private lesson to a middle-aged businessman terrified of deep water. I can't do it. You can. No. I panic. She smiled gently. Fear lies. He frowned. What? It tells you you're already drowning. She stepped backward into the pool. But sometimes, she held out her hand, you're only standing where you can't see the bottom. The man stared at her. Then, slowly, he took one cautious step forward. Across the observation deck, Matteo stood unnoticed behind tinted glass. He had arrived 10 minutes earlier. He never intended to interrupt. He only wanted to see her. Marco folded his arms. You've watched board meetings with less attention. Matteo ignored him. His eyes remained fixed on Brooke. She never mocked the frightened man, never rushed him, never lost patience. She simply stayed beside him until he believed in himself. Marco followed his gaze. I understand now. Matteo finally looked at him. Understand what? Why you keep coming back. The invitation. When Brooke finished work, she found Matteo waiting outside again. You have terrible timing. He smiled. I've been told worse. She pointed toward the pool entrance. You've interrupted 3 different conversations this week. I apologize. You don't sound sorry. I'm not. She laughed. There it is. What? The first honest thing you've said. For a moment, he almost forgot the danger surrounding them. Almost. I'd like to ask you something. She crossed her arms. Depends. Have dinner with me. Brooke blinked. You don't even know my favorite food. I was hoping to learn. She studied him carefully. You ask women out often? No. I don't believe you. You shouldn't. Another answer that was somehow both honest and incomplete. Dinner above the city. That evening, Matteo took her to a quiet restaurant overlooking the Chicago River. No loud music. No photographers. No obvious security. Just candlelight reflected across the water. Brooke looked around. This place is beautiful. It belongs to a friend. The manager greeted Matteo with unusual respect. Good evening, sir. Not Mr. Ethan. Not Mr. Collins. Just Sir. Brooke noticed. Again, dinner began simply. They spoke about books, travel, favorite childhood memories. Brooke admitted she had never left the Midwest. Matteo confessed he had seen half the world but remembered very little of it. How is that possible? You stop noticing beautiful places, he said quietly, when every trip is about survival. She looked at him. There it was again. Another sentence that sounded far heavier than an accountant's life should. The name. As dessert arrived, the restaurant television switched unexpectedly to a breaking news report. A warehouse near the harbor burned against the night sky. Police surrounded the area. The news anchor spoke urgently. Authorities believe tonight's explosion may be connected to organized crime. A photograph appeared. Brooke barely glanced at it. Then she froze. The man on the screen was sitting directly across from her. Older photograph. Different hairstyle, but unmistakably him. The headline read, Matteo DeLuca, Chicago crime leader suspected in gang violence. Her heartbeat stopped. Slowly, she looked from the television, back to him. The restaurant had become impossibly quiet. He didn't move, didn't deny it, didn't reach for the remote. Finally, she whispered, Matteo? He closed his eyes briefly. The silence answered her. You. She could barely breathe. You lied. Yes. You're not an accountant. No. The waiter quietly disappeared. Every employee suddenly looked away, as if everyone already knew. The truth arrives too late. Brooke stood. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. I rescued you. I know. I trusted you. I know. You let me believe. Her voice trembled. that you were just some lonely man who couldn't swim. His gray eyes held hers. The part about not being able to swim, a bitter smile crossed his face, was true. She stared at him in disbelief. That's the only thing that was true? He couldn't answer, because it was. Interrupted. Before Brooke could leave, the restaurant windows exploded inward. Glass rained across the dining room. Guests screamed. Bodyguards appeared from nowhere. Boss. Gunfire erupted outside. Matteo was moving before Brooke understood what was happening. He grabbed her around the waist and pulled her behind a marble pillar. Bullets shattered wine bottles behind the bar. The elegant dining room transformed into chaos. Brooke covered her ears. This can't be happening. Matteo crouched beside her. It is. Another burst of gunfire. One bodyguard collapsed. Marco shouted from across the room. 3 shooters. No. Another guard corrected. 5. The shield. One attacker forced his way through the restaurant entrance. His rifle swung toward Brooke. Time seemed to slow. She saw the barrel. She saw the flash. She never heard the shot, because Matteo stepped in front of her. The bullet struck the ceramic plate he had instinctively grabbed from the table, shattering it against his forearm before grazing his shoulder. He never looked at his own wound, only at her. Are you hurt? She shook her head, unable to speak. He exhaled slowly. Good. No more lies. Police sirens echoed through the streets. The attackers fled. Silence gradually returned. The restaurant looked like a battlefield. Broken glass, destroyed furniture, blood on polished marble. Brooke stared at Matteo's bleeding shoulder. You almost died. I've almost died before. For me, his answer came without hesitation. Yes. She searched his face for another lie. There wasn't one. Not this time. Paramedics rushed inside. One approached Matteo. Sir, you're bleeding. I'm fine. Another reached Brooke. Ma'am, are you injured? Before she could answer, Matteo spoke. Check her first. The paramedic obeyed without question. Brooke noticed. Everyone obeyed him. Without hesitation. Without argument. Because he wasn't merely wealthy. He was powerful. Dangerously powerful. The choice. Outside the restaurant, flashing police lights painted the rain-soaked streets blue and red. Brooke wrapped her arms around herself. I don't know who you are. Matteo stood a few feet away. You know enough. No, I don't. She looked directly into his eyes. Tell me one thing. Her voice cracked. That isn't a lie. For a long moment, he said nothing. Finally, my real name is Matteo DeLuca. A pause. I couldn't swim. Another. And for the first time since they met, the feared mafia boss looked almost vulnerable. Meeting you was never part of anyone's plan. She waited. He took one slow step closer. I didn't lie because I wanted to hurt you. I lied because if you knew my name. He looked toward the dark Chicago skyline. You would have run before I had the chance to know you. Tears welled in Brooke's eyes. I should run now. I know, but you're not stopping me. His expression remained calm. I never will. Another silence settled between them. Heavy, painful, unfinished. Then a convoy of black SUVs pulled to the curb. One by one, heavily armed bodyguards stepped out, surrounding Matteo without a word. He looked at Brooke one last time. I've already ruined your ordinary life. His voice was barely above a whisper. I won't take what's left of it. He turned and walked toward the waiting vehicles. Brooke watched him disappear into the rain. Only after the convoy drove away did she realize something that frightened her more than the gunfire. She had just discovered the man she trusted had lied about almost everything. Yet the image she couldn't erase from her mind wasn't his deception. It was the moment he stepped between her and a bullet without thinking twice. And somewhere across the city, Alessandro Vitali received a report that made him smile. The accountant's disguise is finished. He slowly poured himself a glass of whiskey. Good. He looked toward the glowing skyline. Now let's see how far Matteo DeLuca is willing to go for the woman who still doesn't know why everyone wants her alive. Brooke didn't sleep. The rain continued long after midnight, tapping softly against her apartment windows. but every time she closed her eyes, she saw the same moment. The television screen. Matteo DeLuca. The photograph. The headlines. Then his body moving in front of hers before the gunfire reached her. He had lied about his name, his career, his life. Yet when death came, he hadn't hesitated. He chose her. That contradiction refused to leave her alone. A visitor before sunrise. At 6:30 the next morning, someone knocked on her apartment door. Not loudly. 3 slow knocks. Brooke looked through the peephole. A woman stood alone in the hallway. Elegant black coat. Dark auburn hair tied neatly behind her neck. No umbrella despite the rain. She looked to be in her late 30s. Professional. Composed. Dangerously calm. Brooke opened the door only a few inches. "Can I help you?" The stranger smiled politely. "My name is Sofia Romano." Brooke frowned. "Romano? No relation by blood. A pausa. But I've worked for Matteo for 15 years. Brooke's grip tightened on the door. "If you're here to convince me he isn't really a mafia boss, I'm not." "Because he is." "Yes." Silence settled between them. "I only came to ask one question." Brooke folded her arms. "What question?" Sophia met her eyes. "Did he ever ask you for anything?" Brooke blinked. "What?" "Money." "No." "Information." "No." "Your loyalty." "No." Sophia nodded quietly. Then he was telling the truth about one thing. Brooke laughed bitterly. "I wouldn't know anymore. Matteo's rules." Sophia didn't defend him. Instead, she said something Brooke never expected. "Matteo has one rule." "What rule?" "He never drags innocent people into his world." Brooke stared. "That's exactly what happened." Sophia's expression softened. "No." She glanced toward the window. "Someone else dragged you into it." The words lingered long after she left. Across the river, on the top floor of DeLuca Tower, Matteo stood before a wall of windows overlooking the Chicago River. His injured shoulder had been stitched again. Marco entered carrying a folder. She refused security. Matteo didn't look away from the skyline. "I expected that. She'll be vulnerable." "I know." Marco placed the folder on the desk. "Our surveillance teams lost sight of 2 Vitali vehicles." Matteo finally turned. "They're moving." "Yes." Marco hesitated. "They're moving toward Brooke." For the first time all morning, Matteo's calm expression hardened. "Bring the cars." The lesson that never finished. Brooke refused to cancel her swimming classes. Children still needed lessons. Parents still expected her. Fear didn't pay rent. As she stood beside the training pool, little Emma tugged gently on her sleeve. "Miss Brooke?" "Yes." "You look sad." Brooke smiled. "Do I?" "A little." Emma reached into her backpack and pulled out a childish drawing. It showed Brooke standing beside the swimming pool beneath a bright yellow sun. "You always tell me brave people smile after they're scared." Brooke felt tears threatening again. "Sometimes," she whispered, "brave people need a little more time." The black car. That afternoon, she left work later than usual. The parking lot was almost empty. Halfway to her car, she noticed a black sedan parked beneath a broken streetlight. Its engine idled quietly. The windows were tinted. Something about it felt wrong. She reached for her phone. Before she could unlock it, the driver's door opened. A well-dressed man stepped out. Late 40s. Silver tee. Expensive watch. Warm smile. "Too warm." "Miss Sullivan?" She didn't answer. "My name is Victor." "I don't think so." He laughed politely. "I'd only like a moment of your time." "I'm leaving." "I know." He took one careful step forward. "I worked with your father." Brooke stopped. "My father died when I was 12. "I know. He spoke about you often." Her pulse quickened. "My father never worked in Chicago." Victor smiled again. "People sometimes have more than one life." The interruption. A deep engine growled across the parking lot. 3 black SUVs entered from opposite directions. Brakes screeched. Doors flew open. Men in black suits spread across the pavement with military precision. Victor Sahil. "He's early." Brooke turned. Matteo stepped out of the lead SUV. Black overcoat. Dark suit. Expression unreadable. His gray eyes never left Victor. You shouldn't be here. Victor smiled pleasantly. I was only talking. You were recruiting. No, I was introducing myself. Matteo took another step. I'll only warn you once. The warmth disappeared from Victor's face. For the first time, Brooke saw fear, not in herself. In the man standing across from Matteo, the truth about fear. Victor glanced toward Brooke. Do you know what frightens men like him? Brooke remained silent. Victor answered his own question. Nothing. He looked back at Matteo. Except losing one person. The parking lot became impossibly still. Matteo's voice remained quiet. Leave. Victor smiled. You've already made my point. He walked calmly back to his sedan. Before closing the door, he looked at Brooke one final time. Ask him why your father really died. Then he drove away. The argument? The silence that followed felt heavier than the confrontation itself. Brooke turned toward Matteo. Who was that? No one you need to know. There. She pointed at him. You're doing it again. What? Lying by omission. His jaw tightened. I'm protecting you. You don't get to decide that. I do if your life depends on it. My life depended on the truth. She stepped closer. You looked me in the eyes for weeks. You let me tell you about my family, my dreams, my life, and every single time. Her voice broke. You already knew yours could destroy mine. He didn't interrupt, didn't defend himself. He simply accepted every word, because she wasn't wrong. The confession he didn't mean to make. Finally, Brooke asked the question she'd been carrying since the restaurant. Why me? He frowned slightly. What? You could have disappeared after the lake. You have hundreds of people working for you. You could have thanked me with money. You didn't. She searched his face. So tell me, why did you keep coming back? For several seconds, Matteo said nothing. The answer seemed almost impossible for him to admit. When I woke up, he said quietly, you weren't afraid of me. A long silence. I didn't realize how much I missed that. Brooke's anger softened for only a heartbeat. Then she remembered every lie. You should have trusted me. I know. You didn't. No. Why? His answer came almost as a whisper. Because everyone who learns my real name, he looked away toward the gray Chicago skyline, eventually becomes a target. The proof. Marco approached carrying a tablet. Boss. Matteo didn't take his eyes off Brooke. What is it? They've already posted it. Brooke frowned. Posted what? Marco turned the screen toward her. Herhard Zank. A grainy photograph showed Matteo shielding her outside the restaurant after the shooting. The headline beneath it read, Who is the woman beside Matteo DeLuca? The article speculated wildly. Secret fiancé. Hidden mistress. Witness. Political connection. Target. Thousands of comments had already appeared. Someone had circled Brooke's face in red. Someone had written, Find her first. She stared at the screen. This. Her voice barely existed. This is because of me? No. Matteo answered immediately. It's because of me. He reached for the tablet and switched off the screen. Then he looked directly into her eyes. I gave you one ordinary month. His expression was calm, but regret shadowed every word. I should have disappeared the morning after you saved me. Brooke swallowed hard, but you didn't. No. Why? This time, he didn't look away. Because every time I tried, his voice remained steady, I found another reason to see you. The confession hung between them, quiet and undeniable. Neither moved. The parking lot seemed to disappear around them. Only the sound of distant rain remained. Matteo almost lifted his hand to brush a strand of damp hair from Brooke's face. Almost. He stopped himself inches away. His fingers curled into a fist before they could touch her. I don't deserve your trust. He lowered his hand, but I will earn it. Before Brooke could answer, Marco's phone rang. He listened for only a few seconds before every trace of color drained from his face. Boss. Matteo immediately recognized the tone. What happened? Marco lowered the phone slowly. Our informant inside the Vitali organization is dead. Pause. He left one message before he died. Matteo's eyes narrowed. What message? Marco looked first at Matteo. Then, at Brooke, he said. His voice became almost inaudible. The woman who saved you wasn't chosen by fate. Another silence. Someone pushed your boat into the storm. For the first time in years, Matteo DeLuca felt powerless. He could order men to protect an entire city block. He could make politicians answer their phones at midnight. He could end a war with a single decision. But he couldn't make Brooke Sullivan trust him again. She stood on the sidewalk outside the restaurant, arms wrapped tightly around herself while police officers questioned witnesses. Flashing lights painted the wet pavement blue and red. Neither of them moved. Finally, Brooke broke the silence. Was any of it real? Matteo looked at her. What? The coffee, the conversations, the walks. She swallowed hard. When you laughed with me, was that another lie? His answer came without hesitation. No. She searched his face for any sign of deception. There wasn't one. I lied about my name. I lied about my life. But I never lied about how I felt when I was with you. For a brief moment, neither of them noticed the rain. Brooke looked away first. I don't know how to believe you anymore. I know. And that's your fault. Yes. He accepted every word without defending himself. Home no longer felt safe. The following morning, Brooke returned to her apartment. The hallway looked exactly the same. The same neighbors. The same mailboxes. The same old elevator. Yet nothing felt familiar anymore. She unlocked her door and stopped. Everything inside appeared untouched. But something was wrong. Her bookshelf had shifted slightly. One kitchen chair wasn't where she had left it. Someone had been inside. Her heart began to race. She immediately called the police. 40 minutes later, officers finished their inspection. No forced entry. Nothing stolen. No fingerprints. One officer frowned. Honestly, it almost looks like someone searched the apartment without wanting you to know. Those words frightened Brooke more than a burglary ever could. Someone hadn't wanted her belongings. Someone had wanted information. Matteo's discovery. Across town, Marco entered Matteo's office carrying surveillance reports. They searched Brooke's apartment. Matteo looked up instantly. Was she hurt? No. Anything taken? Nothing. Matteo slowly stood. That's impossible. Marco nodded. They weren't stealing. They were looking. For what? We don't know. Matteo walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. They think she has something. Marco frowned, but she doesn't. Matteo remained silent. Then, almost to himself, he whispered, they wouldn't risk exposing themselves for nothing. A box of old memories. Unable to relax, Brooke began checking everything in her apartment herself. Old closets, kitchen cabinets, storage boxes beneath her bed. She wasn't looking for valuables. She was trying to understand what someone else had been searching for. Inside a dusty cardboard box, she found family photographs, school certificates, Christmas cards, then a small metal key taped beneath the lid. She frowned. She had never seen it before. The tape had yellowed with age. Someone had hidden it years ago. Her father? Her mother? She didn't know. Attached to the key was a faded paper tag. Only 3 handwritten words remained legible. Safety deposit 214. Brooke stared at it in confusion. She had no idea what it opened. An unexpected memory. That evening, Brooke visited her mother. Margaret Sullivan had been living in a quiet retirement community outside Chicago for nearly 5 years. When Brooke placed the small key on the kitchen table, her mother's expression changed instantly. Where did you find that? It was hidden in one of Dad's storage boxes. Margaret picked it up carefully. I thought. She stopped speaking. You thought what? I thought your father destroyed it. Brooke leaned forward. What is it? Her mother looked toward the old family photographs hanging on the wall. Your father rented a safety deposit box before he died. What was inside? I don't know. He never told me. He only said. She closed her eyes, trying to remember. If anything ever happens to me, don't let anyone find the key until Brooke is old enough to decide for herself. Brooke felt a chill run through her. Her father had hidden the key. For her, years before his death. A promise. Brooke left her mother's house just after sunset. She didn't notice the gray sedan following her. She didn't notice the motorcycle parked across the street when she reached her apartment. She only noticed Matteo waiting beside his car. "You've been here long?" "About an hour." "You shouldn't be." "I know." She looked at him for a long moment before holding out the small key. "I found this today." Matteo studied it. His expression remained calm until he read the tag. Then, every trace of color disappeared from his face. "Where did you get this?" "My father's things." He looked at her sharply. "Has anyone else seen it?" "My mother." "No one else?" "No." He closed his hand around the key for only a second before giving it back. "You have to keep this hidden." Brooke frowned. "You know what it is." "I know what it could be." "Then tell me." "I can't." She sighed. "More secrets." "This one isn't mine." He paused. "It's your father's." The beginning of the truth. As Brooke walked toward her apartment entrance, Matteo's phone vibrated. Marco's voice came through immediately. "Boss." "What happened?" "We identified one of the men who entered Brooke's apartment." Matteo waited. He wasn't working for the Vitali family. "Who then?" Another pause. "We don't know. But we found something unusual." "What?" "He accessed only one room. The bedroom. And he searched only one place." Matteo looked toward Brooke, who was unlocking her apartment door. "What place?" "The storage boxes under her bed." Matteo slowly turned back toward the street. The rain had begun again. He finally understood. Whoever had broken into Brooke's apartment hadn't been looking for money, or jewelry, or information about him. They had been searching for something hidden there long before Brooke ever met Matteo DeLuca, long before the night on Lake Michigan, long before the lies, long before the rescue. His eyes settled on the small brass key still resting in Brooke's hand. The attempt on his life and the search inside Brooke's apartment were no longer two separate events. Somewhere, someone believed that key unlocked something worth killing for. And if that person learned Brooke had found it first, the war that had only brushed against her life would come directly to her door.